I find these days when giving talks almost every week with Luang Por going, and he usually would do at least half of the talks, and the rest of us got to divide them up. But doing them more frequently just seems like I have a limited repertoire of themes. Ajahn Karunadhammo took one of them last week, or last Saturday, with the death theme. And I don't know, just, I think normal practice for most people is you kind of work around some reflections and contemplations for a period of time as you enjoy them, reflect on them, and sometimes other reflections or contemplations don't happen for periods of time when you're looking at one particular one or several particular ones in your practice. So it just seems like it's a bit artificial to try and talk about something else other than what's going on currently. So I've, kind of touched upon the theme of anatta, not self, in recent talks, and I just still seem to be making that a primary contemplation these days. So just a few more thoughts on not self, characteristic of not self, or more useful, the perception of not self. I found myself musing over the past couple of days. It's just what is it that we're talking about? What is this? What exactly is this self that we talk about? What is, it's a perception. It's defined as a perception, sanya. But how does it work? What's it for? Why does it happen? Why do we bring that? Why does it rise up and take over? And it's kind of a little hard to ferret out, but just a few thoughts that came up for me around that particular question was that, in a sense, it functions, this perception of self functions as an agent. The word agent came up to me as sort of like a travel agent or an insurance agent. Like a travel agent, somebody who manages your travel itinerary, gets the flights lined up that you want, or the vacation arrangements, and organizes them and delivers them to you. And an insurance agent does the same thing with insurance, finds out what you want and helps you get it, kind of manages those kinds of things, and that the self as an agent just basically manages all of our experience. It's a perception, classified as a perception usually, but it's more comprehensive and less discrete than many other kinds of perceptions. Like perceptions related to sight or sound or one of the other sense bases, have very specific qualities to them. Like you see a form and the perception person comes up, or the perception Moria comes up, or it's sort of like you see something and you identify it from memory, and that comes out as a perception. Ways of classifying experience. explaining experience. But the perception of self just is so more inclusive, invasive, penetrating all aspects of experience in different ways. It's not a static kind of a thing. It's a dynamic experience, the perception of self. Manifests in different ways, like we use the word I to describe the self experience. Sometimes we use the word me. Sometimes we use the words my or mine. And when it's really solidified, we use the word myself. Or if we have a religious belief around it, we call it my soul. So it manifests as it appears in different ways. I being sort of like an active agent on the move to create some sort of experience, to do something. Me is the experiencer of something, the one who receives the results of action, whether it's our actions or somebody else's actions. It's me, the receiver, the recipient. Or we have a sense of my or mine in relation to our experiences, like my body, something that we own. And then, all three of those meshing together with another perception, conception labeled on top of it as this is myself. This is who I am. This is what I am. Or some religions, it's an undying, unchanging soul that moves from one body to another, or from this body to heaven, or whatever. So a real malleable kind of an experience, self. Ajahn Jeff talks about it, and it's like, manifesting as the producer or the consumer. I, the producer, I'm going to do something, the doer, in order to then be the recipient, the receiver, the consumer of experience. I'm going to do something in order to get something. Producer, consumer. And to look at just how it really is also a changing kind of experience. We know from the teachings. The Buddha says, what do you think, bhikkhus? Is perception permanent or impermanent? And the bhikkhus answer, impermanent, Venerable Sir. So we know all perceptions are impermanent, changing, and self is a perception. So the perception of self is always changing too, unstable, hard to pin down. Sometimes it feels really strong, sometimes it feels kind of weak, sometimes in between, sometimes almost imperceptible in very quiet moments. When it's really strong, we notice, we can feel that, we see that and sense that. Particularly if there's strong emotion or strong desire, strong reactivity in some way. Like when there's something we really want, say in the sensual realm, and the energy, the desire, the craving rears up and starts to move forward with some strength, then that sense of self, of I wanting to do something to get that, really starts to develop and build up and become quite strong, and we move into getting it, trying to get it, cling to it, hold on to it, and the more that intensifies and the more that solidifies, the stronger that sense of I'm going to go out and obtain that object of desire. That there's this real sense of self involved. And the sense of me that experiences the result of it is similarly strong. We have that strong hit of gratification for whatever it is that we're looking to get. Or aversion, same thing, I got to get away from. Or ourself in relation to, another person, the sense of indignation building up, and self-righteousness. The sense of self in that self-righteousness just gets larger and larger the more intense it is. If it's quite charged, then we really can feel our self just firming up, taking that stance, that view, how strong that clinging is, and that sense of righteous indignation that I know what's right. He or she, is wrong, and there's just that incredible sense of, surety, self-assurance involved with that, and then the results, acting on it in some way, and then if it's unskillful, which it usually is, then then me experiencing the remorse or the regret. I shouldn't have done that. It's like I did it again. Why do I always do that? So the intensity of that self-experience is pronounced in these really strong emotional states. It's really present. You really know that if you reflect on it and you look at it, that sense of self is very, very apparent and very solid. And then other times, the heat's turned down, everything seems cool, everything's fine. Sabai, maybe the practice is going well, I had a good meditation, and that kind of sense of the perception of self isn't so strong. It doesn't kind of keep you firmed up in the experience. It's you're a little bit more with the flow of things, and the sense of self is weaker. Sometimes, it's just it's so sublime, so quiet. It's just mostly like an essence. So changeable, experience. The perception of self is so changeable, intense to almost, imperceptible sometimes. So just reflecting and experiencing the changeability of something that almost by definition is supposed to be solid. Can I really, point to something that is essentially I, me, or mine, when it's so changeable, has so many different forms, has, so many different qualities of being a parent or not being a parent, or strong or weak. It's just constantly, if you watch the experience of selfing just as an exercise, you can just see how it fluctuates and changes, is unstable. One of the aspects of this perception of self, it's dependent on this notion of control. In the first section of the Anatalakkhana Sutta, the Buddha's questioning the bhikkhus, makes the statement, form is not self, or the body is not self. If the body were self, then the body would not lead to affliction, and one could say in regard to the body, let my body be like this, let my body be like that. Or let my body not be like this, let my body not be like that. But because it's not self, one can't do that. One can't take control, can't take charge of it in that way. And the same with feelings. We all want pleasant feelings. If feelings were self, we'd be able to just say, okay, always have pleasant feelings, no bad ones, nothing unpleasant to experience. I'll just take the good, you can have the bad. But we can't do that. Perceptions, we try and control those, or try and see things in the way we want to see things, or not see somebody in the way we don't want to see them. If we feel like we have a misperception, we want to change that. That's a hard thing to do. Sometimes they're ingrained in there from past repetition, past ways of seeing things, experiencing things through the lenses that we look through. And they just pop up in kind of uncontrollable ways sometimes as a result of past conditioning. Thoughts, we like to think we can control thoughts, but if they're under the influence of greed or under the influence of aversion or delusion, then we often generate all sorts of thoughts that, oh my God, where did that come from? How many times have we had that experience? Oh my God, can I possibly be thinking this? I've been a monk for 20 plus years. Where did that thought come from? And the consciousness, it is, again, pretty hard to control where our attention moves to, whether it's the sights or sounds or the awareness in the body, or all the different sense realms, and the mind especially, the intellect especially, gets trapped moving from one to another, again, under the control of the defilements. So if there really isn't this kind of control, why do we operate thinking that it does, thinking that we do have control? If there isn't this control, why does the self come up, and the sense of self? Why does the perception of self come up? And it's because it actually does have some control. There is some partial control over these experiences of the five khandhas. The problem is that it's not complete control. It's only a partial control. It's kind of like addiction. The whole basis for addiction, like gambling, is a really good example. A long time ago, I had a friend who was a therapist for people with gambling addictions, and he pointed this out a long time ago. So I've always thought it was a good analogy for this too. That it's like the whole thing about gambling is that it's rigged so that you do have some partial successes. Like in a casino or gambling hall, it's programmed so that you get just enough wins to stoke the fires of the addiction. Okay, well, it worked. I won this hand, or the ball in the roulette wheel hit my number, or I hit the jackpot for $50. I got $50 from that one, and then it's sort of like, okay, well, I got that, so I'll get more the next time, but not really comprehending that the whole system is completely rigged so that you get just enough of a hit of pleasure to keep going. And so all addictions are kind of like that. You get enough gratification to reinforce the sense that it's worth pursuing. You keep on doing it. Like the story of I think it's Nasruddin, who keeps on eating through this barrel of hot peppers until his eyes are streaming with pain, with tears and pain, and his mouth is burning. And somebody asks him, "Why do you keep doing that?" He said, "There's a sweet one in there, and I'm looking for the sweet one." What we do to ourselves to get the sweet one. And the sense of self, is the perception of self, the belief in that, whether it's a full-on belief or just sort of a subterranean belief, is dependent on that sense that we do have partial control over some things. There is some influence in some of our experiences. So we kind of get tripped up and fooled to thinking that we should have, complete control. If we had no control at all, nothing was under our control, a sense of self wouldn't manifest. Things would be pretty miserable and chaotic and just subject to the whims of the world, of the nature, whatever. But it's this partial control. So we say we regard our bodies. We do what we can to ward off sickness and pain. We can take certain medicines to make it feel better. We can take certain treatments to get rid of an illness. And we eat certain things that we think are good for us. And we have partial success. And we think, okay, I got it. I took care of this one. I took enough herbs to ward off that cold. Or I took enough medicines to control this condition or to eradicate it. And that boosts our belief that we control this body. And then something else comes up, or it doesn't work, or we just get older and things start to deteriorate no matter what we do. And the harsher realities start to hit. Well, no matter what I do, it's still not obeying. And this is where that teaching from the Buddha, the first part of the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta comes in, of well, I can't make it be like this. I can't make it not be like this. So really, ultimately, it's not self. So there's this sense of partial control. Same with, say like feelings. We sometimes can get good feelings, and when we make some kind of conscious application of energy or effort, putting our attention on some object of pleasure, and we get the gratification. Buddha says there is the gratification, the danger and the escape, but we wouldn't be caught in this if there weren't the gratification. So we get a good feeling, get a pleasant feeling, or we're able to dodge an unpleasant feeling of some sort, and we get this temporary hit of relief, and we believe that we should and could keep doing that, not really realizing that at some point it's not going to work, and ultimately it has its own kind of nature that's not controllable. Perceptions, memories, not wanting certain perceptions to keep arising about a situation, feeling that they're uncomfortable, wanting not to have to experience that. Taking evasive action, moving out of the way, or suppressing it in a way that says, okay, well, I'm not going to think about this situation like that. I'm going to reframe it and make it, positive. And we can do that for a while, and then if it's still kind of entrenched in there, then we relax our attention, relax our effort, and all of a sudden this negative perception pops back up. He really is like that. And how it's, those can be deeply rooted and take a lot of reprogramming to alter. Same with the thoughts that we generate, the programs, as Ajahn Sucitto calls them, the programs, are pretty strong in how we respond and think and follow. Certain kilesa have a certain strength in our mind, a certain momentum to produce certain reactions that just create more kamma, more action, and more results. And of course the same with consciousness, that fundamental bouncing around from one sense sphere to another. Again, not in the normal mind anyway, the normal human mind, the untrained mind, not being able to, or only partially being able to control where we focus our attention for periods of time, where we experience, where we land and grow and proliferate on a sense base. Sometimes having a little bit of control, but when the kilesa take over, they direct that whole movement of conscious experience. So it's this partial control that gives us the food, the nutriment for continuing to believe in this perception of self and miss the constantly changing aspect of it and the ultimate uncontrollability. So I think it's one of the important things to contemplate too is that it's in some ways also there that partial control can be, if we recognize it and see that, we can also use it to our benefit, because if we had absolutely no control over any of this, then life would be pretty hopeless. But there is this sense of enough. We can control some things enough to alter our experience and start to uproot the habitual ways that self rears up its ugly head and creates problems for us. But with this partial ability to control our responses and our direction with right effort, we can learn to recognize the difference between skillful and unskillful perceptions, there's a difference between skillful and unskillful sankharas, creations, and start to use that little bit of control that we have to manipulate our experience into to more skillful ways of acting in response. We can't necessarily control the results of past kamma, past action that comes to us, but we have this capability of using the tools of mindfulness and clarity and alertness and wisdom to create a sense, in a sense, a self that at least temporarily starts to direct and create make our creations into ones that have this capability of actually looking at themselves, looking at creating creations that have a reflective quality, so that we see the process of how we can create a skillful state or a skillful understanding. And we also see, actually how we did that. And from that, we can learn to repeat it and let it grow into a stronger mind habit that then creates this condition for seeing how, not only can we create skillful, wholesome ways that lead to less suffering, like focusing on aspects of generosity, of our virtue, our sila, how we act in the world, how we present ourselves in the world. And we can consciously direct our attention to the effects of that. We can be the conscious receivers of the fruits of our conscious, skillful action. And we can see the results of that. And that creates that's how we learn, how we learn new behavior, by really trying things out when skillful qualities are in control, and watching the effects of acting on those, and seeing how they make us feel good. And in that process, we get to see how we do that. So we can kind of, ride this current of experience and start to learn, what it is that we can control and how to use that in a way to bring more clarity and understanding of that whole process. And then how, when things come to us that are completely out of our control, we don't try and engage in that process of trying to do that, of enacting a strong sense of self, to try and avoid the things that are unavoidable, or try not to have to worry about getting those things we can't get, or that we see don't really serve us in the long term. We can start to have some modicum of choice of choosing things for our long-term happiness, and then when we see things that are unavoidable results of being a human being, having a body, having a conditioned mind, then we learn to let go of that drive to control the experience. It's kind of like, I've never surfed, but kind of what I imagine it might feel like is like, you're out in the waves and you're standing up on the board, and the ocean is sending its waves, and the swells are going up and down, and you're standing there, and you have a firm base, but you also are very flexible. Your knees have to bend, the waves come up, and the swells come up, and the board rises, and you kind of go with that, and you move with that. So there's some sort of sense of control and stability within a whole changing set of conditions, or maybe like being in a boat in that same situation. And you've got your hand on the tiller, and you're steering in a direction, the direction you want to go to, and you're controlling that to some extent, but it's also, you have a light hand on the tiller, so that when some strong swell comes and pushes you in one direction, you don't try and push against the flow. You try and just gently move and steer with a light hand, so that you're not trying to control everything that you can't control, but that you're also controlling the general direction of which you're going in the most skillful way you can, but with a light, flexible hand, so that you just flow and bend with that experience as it comes to you. It's learning that skill of the right level of touch. Picking up and using a sense of self when it's useful, and when the tidal wave is rearing up half a mile away and you sense that it's coming, then you let go of that sense of control and you just try and see what happens with as much skill as you can. So it's kind of like this dealing with the sense of self is just really, using it when you need to, and not buying into its absolute authority, and relinquishing it and relaxing when it's out of control. We were talking the other day about that great statement of like, relax, everything is out of control. And that's a very useful perception to generate concept, using that concept, and also using it and also be alert and wise. And there are occasions when we can pretend that there is something that we can control and steer our minds in the right direction. And use that with our alertness and skillfulness to pick up the sense of self for a period of time, to develop a skillful quality until we don't need it anymore. And then we can relax and let it go. So it's that kind of that middle way, I guess, of completely surrendering to the ways of the world, thinking we really can't control anything, but not being fooled by that which we can't control. And that way the sense of self is a useful tool and not a controlling demon. And we watch it as it changes. Sometimes it's strong, sometimes it's weak, sometimes it's barely there. So how, if we really get that, then we start to let go and relinquish that whole realm of perception. There's this, many of you are familiar with the really beautiful teaching from Venerable Khemika, who is on he's very sick and not doing well, and a bunch of elder bhikkhus are sending us messenger bhikkhu back and forth asking Khemika questions about his practice particularly in regards to the sense of self, and the questions run around the general theme of, do you still have do you still regard any of your five khandhas as self in any way? Khemika's basic answer is I don't regard my body as self. I don't regard my feelings, my perceptions, my mental formations, my consciousness. I don't regard them as self. And they respond to him through this messenger and say, well, if that's the case, then you must be an arahant. He responds, well, no, I'm not an arahant, but I still don't regard these five khandhas as any individual one as who I am, or combination as who I am. But I'm not an arahant, and they're confused, and finally he says enough of this back and forth, and he gets up and goes and visits them and talks with them and tries to explain how even though he doesn't regard form as self or feeling as self, etc., yet there is still this essence, this conceit, I am, that's hovering in his experience. And then he gives two similes which are very, very clear and appropriate similes to describe that more subtle conceit, I am, and talks about a flower, and he says, well, the scent of a flower, is the scent of a flower to be found in the petals or the stem or the pistil of the flower? And the monks respond, well, no. And they say, it's like the scent is just with the flower, but it's not in any one of the particular parts of it. And similarly, with a dirty cloth that is stained, and you wash it in soap or salt or whatever your cleaning agent is, and get it perfectly clean, pristine clean, and you take it out. But yet the scent of the soap still remains until it is maybe treated more and gradually fades away. And can you say, you've got a clean cloth, but there's still a scent there. So it's like that's how he describes this very subtle form of self, even though you don't. And have seen clearly that you can't say that there is a sense of self in any one of the five khandhas specifically, that there is still this essence or this subtle presence, subtle perception of I am until it finally fades away. And that's what he was describing as to where he was, so that he really got it. He wasn't holding to a doctrine of self. He didn't believe in a self per se, presumably, indicating that he was at least a stream enter, having given up that Sakaya Ditti. But still the mana, conceit I am, asmi mana, conceit I am, was still present, one of the final fetters. And as the story goes, he, in the process of answering these questions and talking with these bhikkhus, not only did he realize complete liberation at that point just from giving the talk, but so did the minds of the 60 bhikkhus that he was talking with. Penetrated that conceit, that very subtle conceit, I am, and completed the work. So when that happens, or when we even get just a little bit of a handle on it and have a few moments of not creating this sense of self in our experience, or getting a glimpse, then it's really quite a relief. It's quite a gift to ourselves, and it's a gift to other people too, to not create them in the same way that we create ourselves, not to create them into solid entities. That's part of the self-creation process too. Not only do we do it for ourselves, but we create these very firmed and fixed perceptions of other people as beings, unchanging beings, in many different ways. And I remember a retreat that, as a layman, that I was helping to manage with Debbie, actually, up at Cloud Mountain with Ajahn Sumedho, and one of his talks was around selfhood and the perceptions of self. And at one point he was exhorting us, admonishing us not to be looking up at him giving the talk and creating Ajahn Sumedho. Don't create me, he would say. You look up here and you see this form, and you hear these words, and you have your ideas, and you're perceptions and your concepts of who I am, and you're creating me. So you don't need to do that. Don't do that. Stop doing that. Don't create me. Just thinking, well, that, if we can not do it for ourselves so much, then and we can apply that to other people too, and give the world around us a break as well, and stop creating each other, and stop experiencing each other through a fixed lens. What a gift that is to all of us around each other. Let people change as they wish to change. Let roles change as they need to change. We rely on certain people in certain ways, and if we get dependent on those kinds of relationships, then we don't allow for the natural flow. If we become more secure in ourselves, lessen that need to seek stability in other people, and even understand where real refuge is inside ourselves, particularly through the non-creation of these strong identities based on kilesa. If we can do that in ourselves, we can do that for other people, then we just can more and more become these creatures who are building skillful qualities and allowing others to do the same, and to allow that all to change and to move, to adjust as appropriate. We don't restrict ourselves so much, and we don't restrict others, and we see how we can help each other and ourselves through clarity and wisdom, and kindness and compassion. So I guess I'll just keep it there for this evening. A few thoughts on stuff that I've been pondering. Leave it there.